I'd like to call the October 23rd Offshore Wind Advisory Committee in session. We're going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we do not have any guest presenters for this meeting today, except for obviously one of our committee members will be presenting later on. What I wanted to focus on, just on the front end, is kind of a general update. I know a lot of people in town and have had questions that come up about what's going on with the projects, talking about obviously the federal administration and the president is putting a stop to all this, and that is not necessarily true based on kind of what's going on out there, where the projects are in the permitting process. One thing I have noticed when we got kind of towards the end of the summer, when the weather kind of cleared up and the humidity disappeared, a lot of people started to question and because they were seeing a lot more of the windmills out there, and I received a lot of questions as to what's the current status, how many are out there, what are we seeing. So generally what we want to do is just educate the public here and Westport residents and other residents that are joining us as to the status of these projects, what they're actually seeing out there. I know there's been some concerns expressed from the kind of the visual impact, and especially in the evenings. I don't know if many of you have seen in the evening, basically the flashing red and white lights that are somewhat continuous. I know the island of Nantucket is having discussions with them about how to address that in the future as these projects continue to move forward. But so anyone that came in, if you came in late, there's a little handout there. If you don't have it, it shows a map of the current status of the projects that I'm going to just go over. I'm going to just go over each of the projects just so people have an understanding, name the projects, go through what they are, where in the process they are. Hopefully it takes 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Thrasher to go over. He's been doing some work on kind of the Eversource side with utility bills and various other things that, again, are impacting our constituents. It may not be necessarily, kind of the offshore wind, but it's something that I think we should, kind of look at and see exactly the impacts. So if you have the map that's in front of you, the first, you can see a little green square there. That's obviously the first project we're going to just touch upon. So that is South Fork. That is actually has been completed. It's been fully operational since March of 2024. Its location basically is pretty much due south of our coastline there with the Horseneck Beach area. Due south, it's about 35 miles to the east of Long Island. It's a smaller project. It does connect in East Hampton, New York. The developer is Ørsted. Small number of turbines. There's only 12 turbines out there that are obviously in operation, and the electricity from that goes to New York State specifically.
And a substation.
And with a substation. The Trump administration obviously has no impact on this. South Fork has obviously not been directly impacted by anything that the federal administration has done because they are so far along and obviously have been up in operation. So that's the first one that we are seeing obviously from the coast, and that has been completed. If we move on to those under construction, the first one you are seeing on the top there is Revolution Wind. So the first one, and that's the one that we continue to see construction taking place on. So the status on that, it is under construction. It's about 15 miles south of Rhode Island, pretty close to 15 miles off of our coast as well, 12 miles to the southwest of Martha's Vineyard. The landing for that does come into North Kingstown, Rhode Island. The developer is Ørsted, and the number of turbines there are 65 total turbines. That
Substations.
and some substations. And that is selling electricity to both Rhode Island and Connecticut. So that are the purchases of that. I'm sure you've probably seen this one in the news. This has made a lot of news over the past couple of months. At the end of August, U.S. Interior Department halted the construction of it because they said it was a national security concerns based upon their analysis. At the time of the order, the project was 80% complete at that time. So with that being 80% complete, they obviously were going to challenge that in the court system. September 4th, Ørsted sued the government, and both Connecticut and Rhode Island filed similar lawsuits against the preliminary injunction to stop their construction. And then on September 22nd, a federal judge sided with Ørsted, lifted the stop work order, and they resumed construction that same time in the end of September. So that project is continuing to be built out. I know there are pending lawsuits and litigation from some other organizations against Revolution at the current time, but just so you know, as of right now, that is continuing to move forward with that construction. If we go a little bit further south to the next blue box right underneath it, that is Sunrise. And Sunrise, again, pretty close to our viewing angle, I guess, from the south coast. That is also under construction. It's 30 miles to the east of Long Island, probably about 20 miles south of where we are. It is an Ørsted project. It would connect in Smith Point, New York. The number of turbines for that one will be 84. So one of the major questions I've been getting all at the end of the summer is people seeing the turbines, wondering exactly how many they're seeing. And at that given time, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, with the 12 already completed and the Revolution wind there, you were probably seeing between 60 and 70 turbines at the time. And obviously the Sunrise wind will add another 80 or 84 to that. This is selling electricity to New York State. The federal approval was granted in June of 2024, so obviously nothing that the administration can do on that will stop this. This has already been fully permitted. They have been doing construction very similar to Revolution Wind, so it has not been directly impacted at the current time by anything from the federal administration. So those three projects are really the ones, in my opinion, just from being down at the water, are the ones you're seeing pretty, front and center when you're down along our coast. The other blue box over to the right is actually Vineyard Wind 1. That also is under construction, and they are generating some power from that. As of October 1, the project is able to generate, allegedly, 400 megawatts of power, which means about half the turbines are, in fact, producing power, though the company has not specified really kind of the exact number or how many turbines are in operation or what's actually producing power from that. That project is 15 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. As we've kind of addressed in previous meetings, the landing of this is in Barnstable, Massachusetts. This is a 50-50 partnership between Avangrid and Vineyard Offshore. Number of turbines in that development is around 62 turbines there, and it's going to generate 860 megawatt hours, and that is electricity is being sold directly to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That is strictly a Massachusetts project. Federal approval was granted for that in May of 2021. So again, nothing that so far that the federal administration has done has had any real, will have any real impact on that because the permitting has been in place for such a long time. So that basically covers the green completed and the three projects that are under construction. And then the rest are what we call kind of stuck in permitting. If you look, a lot of these are further out, a lot further offshore. I'll just go through those real fast. The first big yellow area is the Starboard project. And that project, let me just grab my notes here. So Starboard Wind, obviously that is stuck in permitting. That project specifically is, again, another Ørsted project. There is very few specifics about that project. No number of turbines, no megawatts, nobody's purchased electricity because, again, it's kind of stuck early on in the permitting process. The next one after that would...
Jake, what
yes.
was the earlier name for that one?
Early, Constance, would you know that? I just have that listed as starboard wind on my...
Starboard, okay.
How many turbines, you know?
They did not determine that. It's still to be determined as of right now, because it is stuck in the permitting process, and that was, it is listed as an Ørsted project as of right now.
Was that Bay State? No,
Do
original.
you know the number?
I do not
Okay,
offhand.
because each one of these projects, about 10 of them have a number, a specific number.
I've got 10, in total, I do have 10 projects here, so
Yeah, no, it's just that I've never seen that name before.
Yeah, it
What was it?
was that Bay State?
I do not have a base date on my list, so maybe it did change.
Well, Bay State Wind, yeah, it's an Ørsted project, yeah. I think it's got a new name.
Correct, because I do not have a base state wind any of
Oh,
these
it's
10
not called Bay
That's
State
it.
anymore.
Okay.
That could be it.
So that would be the first one we talked about. The second one was what they are calling beacon wind.
Now, is that the orange one you're talking about?
Nope,
Yellow?
this is the other yellow one. This was
Okay.
still in the permitting process. So the first one in the permitting process was what we called starboard wind. The second one is beacon wind. That has supposedly 155 possible turbines. That is owned by BP. Purchaser of that electricity also is to be determined, and that, again, is stuck in permitting. Recently, within the past week, I think news-wise, you might have noticed BP has made a kind of a executive decision, a company decision to delay any further work on that project for, they said basically for the next 3 to 3.5 years to see if there is a new administration that comes in that will obviously help them along with that project. So Beacon Wind, obviously for the next 3 years, we will probably not be seeing anything from them. BP has obviously made that corporate decision not to move forward on that. And then the third one, obviously the furthest out project on there is the Vineyard Wind 2. Not much information on that. That's still kind of stuck in the permitting process. We had addressed that here as a committee in the past because of possible landing locations. I think this is not even really halfway through the permitting process, especially on the federal level. So there is very little information right now out there on that Vineyard Wind 2. Last two that we have there are just in orange and what we call kind of under threat. They're kind of in the pre-construction development phase. So if you look next to the blue, there are two orange. Those are both New England Wind 1 and New England Wind 2. Like I said, pre-construction development, 20 miles southeast of Martha's Vineyard. New England Wind 1 will connect in Barnstable, Massachusetts. There is no connection point for New England Wind 2 as of the current time. The developer of this project is Avangrid. That will, in total, have 129 turbines in the orange area there. The first phase of the project, which is New England Wind 1, is expected to sell about 800 megawatts to Massachusetts, and negotiations over the power contract have been delayed, basically because of the federal uncertainty with the project. So those are those two. And then the last orange one you see there is South Coast Wind. Let me just find what I have. So South Coast Wind, this also has been paused. This is 20 miles south of Nantucket. This is the one that obviously would be more of a local impact. South Coast Wind had possible connection, or says it will connect in Somerset, Massachusetts. That's obviously the Brayton Point, old Brayton Point facility. There is no actual connection point as of right now for South Coast 2. Developer of that is Ocean Winds. Number of turbines there is 141. So the first phase of the project, South Coast 1, is expected to sell about 1,300 megawatts to both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Again, negotiations over this have been kind of ongoing back and forth because of the federal uncertainty with that project. So that's, again, kind of still in limbo as well. Federal approval was granted, so South Coast got its major federal approval in January of 2025, again, prior to this administration being sworn in, but it still needs a few, they call about 3 minor federal permits when Trump took action. So that's also going to cause some issues and put that project still in limbo. And
Plus, they don't have a PPA, they don't have a power purchase agreement.
correct, that
And
one.
they have come up against that deadline now 4 or 5 times, and this last deadline is on November 1st. So we'll see if Massachusetts comes to their rescue or not, but.
And to Constance's point, what we're starting to see now is a lot of the agreements for the purchasers of the electricity, obviously taking a step back because the cost associated with the projects has gone pretty much through the roof. Obviously, we have a lot of various issues that impact in that, whether it's tariffs, whether it's concern over the federal administration, or some of these corporations that are obviously pulling back and deciding to delay these projects, is obviously putting some constraint on the pricing and what it can be sold for, per megawatts.
And flat-out supply chain issues. They don't have the components.
Correct. This project cannot move forward because of the permitting freeze that's currently in place. That's why it's obviously listed in orange or considered under threat. And any of the key permits that were signed kind of at the 11th hour are kind of under risk of losing those permits with this new administration. So on September 19th, most recently, the administration asked a federal judge for permission to revoke South Coast Wind's construction operation plan, which is the last major federal permit an offshore wind project needs before it can start putting turbines in the water. So we're still waiting on that litigation front before that comes forward. So that's kind of high level. It may not sound high level, but high level of the projects that are currently out there. Obviously, there's a lot of market forces. There's a lot of administration forces on these projects. The issue for Westport specifically, I think we've heard a lot about, obviously, the visual concerns with it, both during the day and in the evenings. I know there's Nantucket, because they have a community host agreement with many of these companies, are trying to negotiate to get the lighting changed evening-wise, whether it's only when aircraft fly over. They've been told, I know Nantucket has been told specifically that it'll be something that they can address when the project comes to fruition. What you do notice of a lot of these projects that we do see off of our shoreline, if we add them up, there's 65 turbines, 12, and then 84 turbines. There's a fair share of turbines that are out there, and what you're seeing now is probably about 50% of the ones that, since most of these projects are in construction, you can basically double the amount that you are seeing out there. Because these projects that are most impactful to our shoreline are the ones that will still be moving forward. The ones that are further out or not as far in the permitting process, again, for the foreseeable future, probably will not be moving forward. The only negative, the negative with this is a lot of those projects, Massachusetts isn't even getting any of the power from these projects. These are all going over to Long Island and delivered to New York. So, we're seeing some of the impacts visually, while not obviously none of the power is coming into the Commonwealth at all.
Sunrise was actually marketed to New York by saying that they would not see it from Long Island. I just have a couple things to
Sure.
add, may I? So I just wanted to point out the Sunrise project, which is the latest Ørsted project to be going in, just put in something called an open loop substation. It's the first one like that that's been out there. It's pretty important because South Fork has one substation, and the substations that are out there now, Revolution Wind has 3. They're humongous, but they're not transforming the electricity that comes off of the turbines to DC. So they're basically booster substations. So every one of the turbines that are out there has a line, a cable that goes to the substation with the booster ones. And so it gathers the AC power that's coming off of the turbines and then takes it to the mainland. But the ones that are further out, they will be putting open loop substations. And the open loop substations they will be HVDC, so they'll be taking the AC power off of the turbines that are coming in, and they will be converting it to DC to then take it to the shore because apparently you lose a lot. It's more efficient. You don't lose as much power if you have to transport it for a long way if it's DC rather than AC. But the problem with that is that it generates an enormous amount of heat. And these are huge substations to begin with, and the transformer one that changes to DC, the HVDC one, is about 4 times as big as the ones that you see out there now, which are really big. And they suck in about 8 to 10 million gallons of seawater a day. And they infuse it with basically bleach so that it doesn't pull in or muck up the system. And then they expel it back out into the ocean at 90 degrees. So this is a whole nother kind of substation out there, and they're the first ones to have gotten that in, and they're pretty proud about it. Also, South Coast, and I know we have people in the audience that know a lot more about the South Coast project than I do, but I just wanted to add that even though South Coast is sort of in limbo right now, big time, without a power purchase agreement, and also have not finished their federal permitting, they are still pressing to put their cabling in. So they're still, and this is our next door neighbor. So this is up the Saconnet, over Portsmouth, and then up to Brayton Point over the bay. So that's a pretty important project to keep an eye on. And I guess sooner than later we'll find out from the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board whether they're going to allow them to do that, because if you remember, the first thing they do on these projects is they do the cabling to connect the project into the mainland. So the one that was looking at coming through Westport, that would be their first thing that they would do in the structure of the construction of the project. And one final thing is that there are a number of lawsuits going on against the various projects. So I know that, Jake said, well, these are so far along that nothing can touch them and they'll probably continue. Maybe, but there is good reason for the federal government to perhaps cancel these leases. There's a number of lawsuits, but one of the most promising ones, if you want to see this happen, is by Green Oceans, which is a local organization, and they are suing under the Administrative Procedures Act, both Orsted for Revolution Wind and for South Fork, and they have about 37 co-plaintiffs. They are suing BOEM, NOAA, and the Army Corps of Engineers under 8 federal statutes, and they have received standing through the federal district court on 6 of those statutes. So this is a pretty important case to watch. And one of the most important statutes that they received standing on was the OXLA, the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. And the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act is very, very important because it's supposed to protect navigation, fishing interest, and national security. And there is good reason to question whether under the Administrative Procedures Act that this that it was lawfully permitted. And that is what is being questioned with a lot of these suits. So that's all I have to say about that. But
Thank you, Constance. So as kind of Constance pointed out, I think a lot of these larger conglomerate or corporations that own a lot of these projects are obviously making internal decisions as to how they want to proceed. Constance pointed out that South Coast may be trying to lay cabling on the Sakonnet River even prior to putting any turbines in. Because if you notice, a lot of these projects are not short-term projects, right? They take years to kind of build them out. So if they can do something on the front end for the next 2 to 3 years and then wait for maybe a change in the federal administration to get that permitting process moving forward faster, I think they're doing that. Obviously, you see BP made the decision to basically delay a lot of their projects for 3 years. Ørsted seems to be making a calculated decision to continue to try to do some of their projects, as well as Ocean Winds, which is the ones that are doing South Coast Wind in too. So it's kind of the thing with a lot of these projects is it's what I presented today and what Constance had talked about can change tomorrow. There's a lot of pending litigation. There is a lot of internal decisions that they are making with these projects.
But they're going after that because they know that they have sympathetic, supportive state governments. So when they're talking about doing the cabling up the Sakonnet and up to Brayton Point, they know that Rhode Island and Massachusetts are likely to allow that, whereas because they haven't finished their federal permitting, they really can't work in the federal waters quite yet. So that's why they're still going at it.
So if anyone obviously asks questions as to what's going on, you might be a little bit more informed as to the projects that are ongoing, what projects, number of turbines that are out there. I mean, at the end of the day, you're probably going to see, like I said, probably about 165 turbines that will move forward. With the 2 projects, I know there's one that is possibly the Revolution Wind may still have some litigation against it, but those are the 2 that are, or 3 projects, first and foremost, that are off of our shoreline that'll have kind of the largest impact. Add the rest of the turbines at a later date with that permitting. So that's just a high-level analysis of that. The only other agenda item we had for this evening is Christopher Thrasher has done some work in the past. He's got a few pending bills in the legislature, as well as looking at a lot of the Eversource issues. I think we constantly see. I know there's a petition drive right now for a voter initiative on some Eversource stuff, as well as Liberty and National Grid and all the other power suppliers. I know there's discussion points as to what makes up a bill, the distribution, the transmission charges. I hear people say we're paying for green energy. That's not there yet. But Christopher's kind of has a little bit better background to this. We'll go through a little bit of the just a high level. We don't want to spend all evening on Eversource, but I think educating the public as to exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and then making an educated decision as to how someone wants to move forward with the voter initiatives and green energy. And one side thing, the town of Westport has a kind of a power agreement or electricity agreement with Constellation Energy. And just recently I received a letter talking about, the build out and, different rates that you could purchase. And I did find it somewhat amusing that you could decide to pay up in kilowatts hours if you want to have, I believe, 100% coming from green energy, allegedly. So I did find that a little bit amusing that I'd be interested to see how many people are taking up the offer to pay more money for electricity for that. So I decided to go for the low one. So, but
Yeah, I'd also like to note that Constellation is at around 15 cents a kilowatt hour for the regular, non.
oh no, it is good. It is.
And that the Eversource standard offers in the 13 to 14 cents range.
Yeah.
So I dropped out of the, whatever you call it, the amalgamation or the conglomeration or whatever,
Aggregate.
and get a cheaper rate for the delivery, for the power part, not the delivery. Obviously, that's regulated.
Okay.
Jake, I was just wondering, I wonder if we would like to give the audience a question. Do they have any questions or comments about the first part of it?
Yeah, if the first section, I don't know if I don't know if I would have or any committee members would have the answers, but if there are any questions, what was presented, yes, sir, you can step up to the microphone. Sorry, sorry, I gotta make you get up.
I am Bernie Jerome from Dartmouth, and I have been involved in this since 2018 because I was a consultant to Brayton Point, the owners of Brayton Point from
You speak
2018.
directly into the microphone.
I was a
I have
consultant to
hearing
Brayton
aid on,
Point
but I
from
still can't hear
28,
you.
so do I. So I was a consultant to Brayton Point from 2018 to 2023. And all of this stuff was going on back then, but nothing had been voted yet. For example, a fellow from Vermont had come to Brayton Point. They had put together the switching equipment plan that was going to be installed at Brayton Point. So when the lines came off from the ocean onto Brayton Point, that equipment was going to cost, each unit was $27 million. That plan never went through. I still keep in touch with Steve Miller, who owns Brayton Point. They're not interested in doing anything with wind people right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when somebody says, well, I want to run up the Susquehanna River and connect to Brayton Point. The other thing that's going on with Brayton Point is they've been talking to Captain Armenia, Mike Armenia, the nuclear engineer, and they're talking to them about small modular reactors, which would be really interesting. They're not radioactive, but people are going to say reactors and go crazy, but it's a much more efficient way of producing energy than wind turbines. It costs a lot less, and it's steady, and it supplies the grid the way it's supposed to be supplied, which turbines do not. So, and that's basically all. Now, I have one question. When I'm standing at the junction of Horseneck Road and East Beach and looking southwest of the point, which project am I looking at?
Revolution.
Yeah, you're
Revolution?
most likely looking at Revolution Wind.
Yeah, because I remember when this first started and I really got interested and I counted 11 turbines. The other day I counted 65.
So that you're probably right, spot on. So the ones that are already out there, there are 12 already out there, fully constructed for the South Fork. There will be 65 up from Revolution Wind, and I know they're not fully built out yet. Remember, that was the one. They were about 80% complete. So
Right.
they probably have 50 out there plus your 12. You're probably about 62 right now. So there are some more going up to finish that project off.
And the last thing I have is I remember sometime within the last couple of weeks of seeing that one of these projects is up to 50% in terms of their turbines producing. And I've never seen anything anywhere that's told us how much per kilowatt that electricity is going to cost. Does anybody know the answer to that? Thank you.
I don't think you will.
I don't think we have that information.
I don't think
Give
they'll
you an
let you
average.
have it.
I can certainly give you an average of the,
Well-
some of the PPAs right now are up to about 150 per megawatt hour.
So
megawatt.
that's a good lead in. I will let, did anyone else have any questions or concerns? Thank you, sir. Christopher, do you want to give your presentation?
Sure thing. Are we set to go, Val? I think I saw it popping up through on the HDMI there, so. Oh, that was the, okay.
Would it be better to turn off maybe that light?
No, it's not.
We can't.
It's trying to find that. So if you,
there's
try the
HDMI.
HDMI and we'll see if it,
Oh, all right, yeah. Okay.
there we go, okay.
Thank you, Val.
Would
No,
it,
it's not
would it,
showing on those.
would it help to turn off some of these lights? I just don't know.
That'll work. That's
Is that
probably.
better? A little bit more? Hey, is that better?
There we go. Thank you.
Is there any, is that one gonna work too, or are we?
We'll just run off of this.
Sounds good to me.
And then
All
she
right.
has it on the TV anyway, so
Excellent.
thank you, Chris.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. This is going to be an overview of basically an Eversource bill, something I think all of us are pretty familiar with. I'm going to talk a little bit about the particular charges, and then we'll talk a little bit about after I'm done with the presentation, I'll just give a brief overview. Jake mentioned some of the ballot initiatives that I've been working on regarding some of these fees, and we'll get to that in a little while. But first of all, I know somebody mentioned it's getting a lot clearer to see them. This photo was taken at East Beach, I believe, at the end of August. So there you go, right there. All right, so here is the familiar bill. So this particular bill, interestingly enough, is actually for a back office that's had its breakers turned off for all of the months you see on this bill. You might be asking yourself, why is a smart meter reading 104 kilowatt hours for a month where the breakers have been off? But that's a whole other conversation. Also, I haven't paid it yet, but anyway. So the pertinent part of this bill is where you see the current charges for electricity. You'll see the supply charge and the delivery charge. And what you can see here is that the delivery charge is around 85% higher than the supply cost. Now, if you imagine this is a bill for your home, obviously that 85% charge makes a bigger difference than just the $30 bill here. So the question really is how we got here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down list by list, charge by charge, and explain some of the baked-in fees that it's a little hard to see until you do the research. I will mention first off that everything I have in this presentation has been sourced. I've got all my sources listed. Be happy to pass those out as well. So, all right. So this is just an overview of where the money goes. As you can see, about 35% is your generation service, 20%. 30% really comes from policy surcharges on the delivery charges. The base delivery costs, that's more of the transmission costs, the actual delivery costs, the infrastructure costs, the transmission costs, which is mostly mandated on a federal basis. So the end result here is that Massachusetts residents now pay among the highest electricity rates in the U.S. And I think it's like second, third, and fourth are Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. I can't remember exactly the order, but the Northeast is exceptionally expensive compared to the rest of the country. The average residential rate exceeded 30 cents per kilowatt hour compared to a national average of 16 cents per kilowatt hour in 2024. And again, over half of the typical Eversource or National Grid, a lot of people like to blame Eversource. I don't necessarily blame Eversource here. It's the same thing on either bill. There's so much of it that is made up of state-created charges and policy riders that have nothing to do with the actual fuel or the delivery costs. So the first charge here is the generation service charge. Now, what you would think is that this is only just the actual cost of generating the energy. However, there are green energy mandates that drive up the base cost of the electricity. So what you're paying for is the cost of the electricity that's purchased by the supplier, so Eversource, or if it's one of the agreements in the town. The towns have separate generation agreements. Westport, of course, has one of those, the community aggregation agreements. But this charge it's not a delivery fee. It is the actual energy. But the charge is heavily influenced by state mandates that require suppliers to buy or fund renewable and clean energy at above market rates. So two things that go into this charge are the Clean Energy Standard. It's got the CMR listed there, and that's a Mass DEP regulation that requires suppliers to purchase shares of clean energy, clean electricity every year. 60% by 2030 and 100% by 2050 is the current mandate. And what that means is that suppliers either must buy expensive clean energy credits or alternative compliance payments if they're falling short of those energy goals, and these costs get rolled directly into the generation price that you pay. And so the bottom line is that ratepayers are forced to subsidize higher cost renewable procurement, including offshore wind. So if we move on to the next driver, it's the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is a combination of a Massachusetts general law and another CMR. This actually dates back to 1997. It's one of the first renewable energy mandates that the Commonwealth put in place. It requires every supplier to buy a growing share of electricity from, quote, new renewable generating sources. Technologies include wind, both onshore and offshore, solar, hydro, wave, tidal, biomass, and the obligations are actually layered on top of the Clean Energy Standard, which basically means you have two parallel mandates that are driving up the supply costs. And again, suppliers that cannot find enough renewable energy, renewables to to supply their customers, they have to purchase renewable energy credits or figure out the alternative compliance payments to the Mass DEP. So what this means is that the bottom line is the renewables aren't free. They're requiring higher contract prices to guarantee the financing. And as we mentioned, the Commonwealth is ramping up the targets, and the prices are rising accordingly. And so you asked a question about what are the costs of these PPAs right now. Well, they're averaging right now, the latest PPAs are averaging 150 per megawatt hour, which is, again, nearly triple the average wholesale price for traditional generation, and also part of why these contracts are being delayed so long right now, why they're not being initiated, is because the price is just outrageous. So the tie-in here for offshore wind, it's a direct tie-in under Section 83C of the Green Communities Act. Utilities must sign long-term contracts for offshore wind generation. The contracts that are approved by DPU, and then the costs are allocated to ratepayers. So, the offshore wind energy credits that are also used to satisfy those targets, they're all linked directly to these supplier costs. And the other thing that must be noted is that because the offshore wind projects have these huge upfront capital costs and the transmission expenses, those contracts are going to inflate the generation rates for years to come. So moving on, the key takeaway here is that every kilowatt hour you buy, even for just a generation charge, carries a premium for renewable credits, clean energy attributes, and offshore wind contracts baked into the price of the energy itself. And the suppliers, so again, a lot of people like to go right after Eversource. Now, I'm no huge fan, but I will say they can't escape these mandates. These things are imposed upon them, which means they have to pass the cost onto us. And the Massachusetts law that forces suppliers to purchase renewable energy and again, an increasing share, it's always getting more expensive. These costs are automatically folded into the generation service charge. So you're not going to see that broken out like you will for the rest of these charges, but it's certainly baked in there. So this is an overview of all of the other quote-unquote delivery charges that they like to put in. Now, I'll go over these one by one, but real quick here, just on this overview, if you look at the green energy link to these charges, you can see the distribution charge is a direct link to green energy because it includes upgrades for renewables and EV integration. The transmission charge is direct because it includes offshore wind interconnections. The net meter recovery surcharge, we'll get into that. That's 100% as a result of solar policy, as is the distributed solar charge, the renewable energy charge, which goes directly to fund the Mass Clean Energy Center. The energy efficiency charge goes directly to the state emissions reduction plan, and the EV program charge, of course, goes 100% to electrification mandates involving EV charging infrastructure. So, we'll get to, like I said, we're just going to go charge by charge here. So the first one is the customer charge. And of course, it's a fixed fee that every customer pays. This is a business bill, so it's a little higher. I'm pretty sure it's $10 for everybody, for customers, for residential customers right now. But it's a fixed fee. It's set in the rate cases before the DPU. And it's ostensibly to cover, well, a little bit more than ostensibly. It does cover billing, meters, and service availability. However, it also is a guaranteed revenue stream to cover grid modernization and electrification infrastructure costs. So it also can be used by the DPU. They've allowed higher fixed charges to fund, quote, grid modernization or advanced metering or electrification readiness. Many of these that are goals of the state's net zero 2050 plan. So again, the end result, you pay more each month, regardless of your consumption. So moving on to the distribution charge. Now, this is a per kilowatt hour charge for the local distribution system. So this is when we're talking about actual infrastructure, poles, wires, et cetera. These are set by the DPU, and they're also detailed in each utility's their tariff schedules. And The distribution rates have climbed sharply as utilities are investing in the solar interconnection, the battery integration, all of this make-ready EV infrastructure, as well as, again, the grid modernization plans are a huge part of this. And the DPU's own orders state that utilities must, quote, transform the distribution system to enable decarbonization. So again, more costs that are baked into these distribution charges. Next up, the transition charge. Now, this actually is a relic from a past restructuring act in 1997. The way this actually works now, you usually see like a tiny credit, maybe a few cents here and there, but it's working just to reconcile revenues from contracts for when they. Basically, there was a large restructuring of the entire way utilities were regulated in the Commonwealth. So this is just a kind of a leftover charge from that restructuring act, which is still on the books today. So next up, you have a transmission charge. So this is where really you have a lot of baked-in costs here that are very well hidden. So this covers the regional high-voltage transmission costs from the ISO New England, which is most of, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if it includes New York or basically everybody from New York. It doesn't, that's right.
Not New York.
That's right, not New York. So everybody north, but it's all the New England states here. And so again, the way that these charges are baked in. First of all, I should mention this particular charge. This is regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So this is it. This is a federal charge. But again, everybody pays for the transmission, and again, they bake in some of the cost for whether it's offshore wind or whether renewables. This goes back to a lot of the grid modernization things really show up in this transmission charge. But again, that's on a federal policy. Now, here is the part that really tends to drive everybody nuts, and that are the policy add-ons that inflate the electrical bill far beyond the cost of generation or delivery. And every single one of these is traced directly to a Massachusetts statute or a DPU order that's designed to finance clean energy. And again, most of the time with no ratepayer consent. I'll get into that a little later. But they make up more than a dozen hidden taxes on every kilowatt hour that you use. So we'll start out with the net meter recovery surcharge. What this is doing is funding payments that utilities make to customers who export solar back to the grid. So when a solar customer is paid retail rates for their energy, for their excess energy, the utilities recover these costs by charging everyone else through the surcharge. So it's 100% direct link to green energy mandates. It was created to promote rooftop solar adoption, but as more and more of us have the solar, non-solar customers are getting hit with billions in the cost transfers. And again, the end result is you're paying higher rates to subsidize other customers' panels. So the next charge is called a revenue decoupling charge. They should really just call it profit protection for the utility companies. So this is a DPU invented mechanism or maybe not invented, but certainly DPU mandated mechanism that guarantees that utilities earn the same revenue even if customers use less electricity. So bottom line is, let's say energy sales drop. If there's a situation where the utility still is not going to be able to make their allowed profit margin, they're compensated through this charge. So this is also created to explicitly to remove utilities' disincentive, quote unquote, to promote
Chris,
energy.
Just one comment there.
Sure.
Regulators understood that regulators wanted to achieve energy efficiency, but they also knew that utilities had to sell a certain amount of electricity to make the authorized rate of return. And so there was a conflict there. If the regulators who supported energy efficiency wanted to get the utilities on their side, they decoupled. And that's why you call it profit protection. I would call it more pragmatic politics to get utilities and the energy efficiency people on the same side. Years ago, utilities marketed electricity, and they wanted to sell more. And there was like, what was his name? Easy Kilowatt or something, I forget his name, Ready Kilowatt. And that was a whole big marketing campaign just to sell more electricity. And then we realized we were polluting the earth, and so we wanted to actually consume less electricity. And the regulators realized to get the utilities on their side, they went to, the revenue decoupling,
Well,
which is a very smart thing to do in my mind.
Mr. May, I must say here, you hit a very important point, and that is the motivation for these for many of these programs, including the one you just described,
Yeah.
was because an issue has been discovered. Well, maybe not discovered, but an issue and concern for the environment has grown, and I think it's important for all of us to realize that a lot of these good ideas, or what you think is a good idea, come from a place of trying to be better stewards of our earth. And I think it's important for all of us, especially when we get very angry with this, with the end results, to understand that many of these policy items are coming from a place of trying to do better. My contention, though, is where we are at this end result. It's just a compounding law of unintended consequences piling up. So, but I do take your point. I appreciate it.
And just one more comment. If the DPU were to authorize a return on equity of like 9.8%, which is where Eversource is, they have to have a chance to make it. There's so many commissions, Connecticut, for example, might authorize 9.5, but they've got barriers to getting anywhere near that. And that's why the Connecticut Commission is blown up, and the governor has repopulated the commission. Massachusetts has had a relatively good rate regulation for 20 or 30 years. And because of, fairness like that for decoupling and an ability to earn the authorized ROE.
Well, and again, I think that gets to a larger policy question about for-profit utilities, but that's a whole other, conversation. And I will note here, even on this example, Bill, I mean, the revenue decoupling charge is actually a credit. So, it does go either way. It does go either way, to be fair. Yeah,
it can go either way. Yep.
But what I think a lot of people have seen over the past few years is, again, it's just one more. This is the things you're seeing on your bill are direct results of policy, good, bad, and ugly.
There are a lot of questionable policies in that bill. I would suggest decoupling is not one of them.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. And again, I appreciate the comment, because it is important to note again that it goes either way depending on the bill, right? So we'll just move on to the next few here. These are so the next one is a distributed solar charge. So this is obviously 100% going to the infrastructure. This is a recovery mechanism for what's called the Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target Incentive Program, the SMART program. Basically, SMART pays developers fixed long-term rates for solar generation, and any difference between the market price and the incentive price is charged back to all ratepayers. Again, so it's distributed all across all across the Commonwealth, and what happens a lot of times is you basically have ratepayers that are financing, guarantee contracts for private solar companies and investors, not just local homeowners. So coming up next is the renewable energy charge. So this is the per kilowatt hour surcharge on all investor-owned utility customers that this funds directly the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So this is a direct link. This you can absolutely see every time you see your bill. This is going directly to the Mass Clean Energy Center. So the next charge here, last two here, the next one is the energy efficiency charge. This is usually the largest single policy fee on most bills, and it funds the Mass Save program. And here's the thing about Mass Save. It's actually been in the news recently. I think the auditor came out with a with a report, and there's been other reports about how some of the lower income communities that Mass Save was intended to help benefit, in fact, are getting hurt the worst when it comes to these charges, and not seeing any of the benefits as far as the weatherization or the rebates or any kind of energy efficiency rebates. Again, going back to the idea that a lot of these things started out as what somebody thought was a good idea to combat real issues, I think we're dealing with a law of unintended consequences when it comes to Mass Save right now, because you're and this is I'm off script a little bit here, but a lot of times what you're subsidizing, you're not subsidizing, the single family home down the street. You're subsidizing, for a fourplex or a large apartment building. It's turned into something that it was not intended to be. And again, it's the single largest policy mandated charge that is itemized on your bill. So, and also another thing worth noting here. So for 2019 to 2021, it was 2.8 billion. It's up to from 22 to 24 was up to 4.1 billion, and the projections are even higher for this year. All right, so the last one is the electric vehicle program surcharge. So this goes directly to make-ready infrastructure, charger rebates, EV incentives. It probably paid for the charger out there. This is where this is another one that goes directly to green energy. Again, the end result is that every ratepayer is helping build this EV infrastructure. Again, a little off script here, but I think it's been said many, many times. If all of us went to electrical vehicles tomorrow, the grid would collapse. We cannot possibly sustain every automobile on the road as being electric right now. But anyway, again, this is just another surcharge that gets added on to your electric bill. So the other thing is, why are we talking about this today? Well, it's because the offshore wind development is, the fingerprints are on all of these charges, whether it's the Renewable Energy Trust Fund, the Mass Clean Energy Center. It's funding directly and financing offshore wind port infrastructure. There's energy efficiency plans that include strategic electrification to prepare the grid for offshore wind generation. That goes back to the grid modernization and transmission improvements that are being made. The transmission charge, again, is recovering those fiscal costs. The supplier side mandates. The bottom line is that offshore wind is driving costs on every part of the bill, delivery and generation, and now, of course, the surcharges. And this is the part that is interesting if you want to get into some of the details here as far as which policy instrument is affecting which part of the bill. I won't read the whole thing here, but I will, of course, have this available for anybody who wants to take a look. Again, also a note on those PPAs for the offshore wind contracts. Like I said, right now they're at about 140, 150 per megawatt hour. And all of this, again, has to do with the idea of meeting the Commonwealth standard of 100% of clean energy by 2050.
Mr. Thresh,
So-
could I, you mentioned the 150 per megawatt hour. And as we look at this, we're looking at standard charges of about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And so it says, wow, 15 cents versus $150, but it's $150 per megawatt hour, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. And if my math is correct, $150 per megawatt hour is 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you were to do this apples to apples instead of kilowatt to megawatt, it would be about the same.
Well, I think the one thing that you have to recall is that this is the supplier level PPAs. This isn't what's going to actually be charged by the individual. So there is a difference. I agree. I'm not making the comparison of 15 cents to $150. I take that point, but there is but nonetheless you're looking at an extensive increase in the actual end cost to ratepayers based on the current PPAs. And again, we're paying close to that now, the 15 cents and change per kilowatt hour. That's with PPAs that were nowhere close to this level. So, But again, like I said, this chart just goes on some of the specific issues here. So I'll talk a little bit right quick about well, I'll give you a bottom line here. And this part, this is me. This is, I feel it's very, very clearly, Massachusetts has basically transformed their electric bills into a vehicle for climate policy. And a lot of this, it began as clean energy incentives. It's become a regressive compulsory tax on every ratepayer. It also, again, has removed ratepayer consent. Ratepayers are no longer simply paying for electricity. They're funding instead a sprawling network of climate mandates, subsidies, infrastructure projects within these delivery and surcharge fees. And I'll conclude just by briefly talking about the ballot initiative. So there are 3 different ballot initiatives that I created along with a couple with Elijah D'Souza, who's his group is called Citizens Against Eversource, and I wrote the initiatives to combat a couple things in these utility charges. The specific thing by making it so that you had to have an affirmative opt-in to be charged all of these program fees, all of these extras. Now it is a tall order to get on the ballot, and of course, so that the petition gathering phase, the signature gathering phase is ongoing. We'll see if they actually make the ballot, but I do think it's important that this stays. Everybody knows every month when you open your power bill, it hits home really quick, and I think, unfortunately, I think it's only going to get worse unless something is done to combat these mandates and these targets that I think are just unfortunately completely unattainable. So, and with that, if anybody has any questions from the committee,
Thank you, Christopher. Just anyone from the table first. And thank you for the question, John, because I wasn't going to do the math. I didn't know what kilowatt and megawatt conversion was, so I appreciate that. I think
So that's kilowatt hour and megawatt hour.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a megawatt is a measurement of capacity that a generating machine has. A megawatt hour is what it produces in 1 hour out of 8,760 in a year.
okay. Thank you.
Big difference.
So I appreciate Christopher's presentation. I think it's more just to educate the public, right? All I care about, and I think all the committee cares about, is people making educated decisions on what they want to do and how they want to spend their money. And, obviously with going through the Eversource bill, you see a lot of that. I think the way I calculated, I believe a lot of those policy choices was basically about 10%. The way I looked at it, I think of that
This
$29
specific-
charge,
yeah,
that
with those
specific
specific
one,
charges, yeah.
about 10%. But again, I'm not opining either way. It's just something that we continue to hear Eversource. I think this is a great presentation, actually, for others to at least look at and educate themselves and decide, which way. If there is a voter initiative, the most important thing is that people are educated and they make an educated decision based on facts. So I appreciate Christopher at least presenting that, and I'd actually like a copy of that because I'm always telling my wife to turn the lights off, but maybe it's not her fault. So. Any questions from the crowd? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let me just start with Constance from the committee first.
Yeah, and just a couple things. The transmission charge is probably the largest of the add-on fees there, and I do think it's important to note just how that is related to offshore wind, because that is all of the cabling that when it gets to our state, when it gets out of federal waters and it gets to our shores, then we pay basically 100% of that. We pay about 40% of what goes on out federally through our tax breaks and incentives, but once it gets here, we pay it all. And so those are, I think they said something about about $1 million a mile in terms of laying cable and the lines to connect in.
Underground is probably about 10 million a month, I think.
Yes, probably. But I wanted to sort of break it down in terms of what it is about offshore wind and renewables in general, and sort of get some feedback and ask you. Now, I know that So because it's not a steady source of electricity, of power, it's intermittent because the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And so it requires, the renewables require dispatchable power. So when the sun doesn't shine and the wind's not blowing, we have to rev up the power generators so that we can have a steady state, right, on the power grid, because it has to be at a very steady state. And in order to have dispatchable power, we have to have something called like peaker natural gas plants. And those are, they're basically, I mean, I've seen pictures of them. They're kind of like, they operate like jet engines. So, pardon?
There's one in Tiverton, Rhode Island.
So when they come on like vroom. And so they are much more pollutive and put out a lot more carbon than our traditional large, steady state nuclear, coal, natural gas plants that provide our regular power, right? So that we have to build out a whole nother infrastructure and to support these renewables. And we have to have, then they have to have batteries, right? Large batteries in order to stabilize the intermittency of them. And then because we're on a regional grid, the ISO New England has to buy the cheapest power available at the time. So if it's a super windy day and there's lots of wind coming in, then they have to buy that but that's subsidized. So the subsidies come into play, and it tends to squash developers wanting to invest in base load, steady state, large power generating facilities. And so what else am I missing here? I mean, I'm sure I didn't like express that very well. But
I would like to, this is one time I actually agree with Constance on this, because there is something called grid reliability. And if you have too much renewables, when the wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, it's not always predictable. And you can crash the grid and have a blackout. And, there are 10 projects that Jake talked about earlier in the meeting. 3 of them go to New York, but 7 of them are really planned for New England. And those 7 amount to 6,700 megawatts of power. And right now, I just checked it, our load is 14,000. We have a tiny little grid, nice little grid up here in New England, 6 states, smallest grid in the country. But we have it, it's ours. And if you're satisfying half the grid with either solar or wind power, and things don't work out right, you can crash the grid. So, on the one hand, I do support some of these projects, maybe half of them, but we don't want all those projects because of the danger to grid reliability. So I would just like to say that. So.
Oh, well, that's so kind of you. Thank you for agreeing with me on something. Yeah, I was just trying to better understand sort of what it is that goes into making states that have renewable portfolio standards have their electricity rates so high, and those that are building out more renewables. Why are electricity? Because right now there's this big back and forth between between those who support renewables and those who don't, saying, no, it's your fault that the electricity rates are so high, and they're going to be higher if you don't let us build more of these things. So it's sort of like, what's the truth?
Mm-hmm.
So, related to Massachusetts policy, I can tell you right now, one of the largest drivers is those clean energy credits or the alternative compliance payments that are required if you don't meet certain targets, right? And it's also planning for those that are going to be implemented as on a rolling basis as well. So it's when you're dealing with a renewable that's not necessarily a steady source, that also has to go into the calculations, right? So you may still miss a target even if you're using the renewables because it's not as steady a source of energy. So,
Renewable and steady.
well, that's the other thing. I'm certainly not opposed to the use of renewable energy, and I think also there's a great company actually in Massachusetts that's working on very small scale nuclear reactor technology. It's really actually just saw a presentation by them a couple months ago. It was amazing what they're working on. But and the thing that I will say that bugs me so much about this the offshore wind, the push for offshore wind as the end all, I guess, is that frankly this industry would not exist were it not for government subsidies. It would not exist were it not for mandated costs or mandated expenditures. And I think that frankly I think that offshore wind has become a distraction from getting back to the questions of being stewards of our earth and actually working towards environmentally sustainable solutions. And it bothers me that this industry exists at all because it really, if you look at it on paper, there's no way it would make sense for any developer were it not for these government subsidies, all state, federal, all the above. So.
Thank you, Christopher. Any quick? Oh,
One more comment.
back to the microphone.
I just have one more comment. This is just to add a little fuel to the fire. There are 3 million people in the metro area of Montreal, Canada. There's about 1 million people in the metro area of Boston inside 128. Boston pays 568% more for its electricity than Montreal. Why? Because Quebec Hydro is all hydro. They offered us 30 years ago to sell us power. And we said no. And that was at 10 cents a kilowatt.
Thank you. Any other comments from the crowd or participants?
Or to help educate us as to,
Christopher, thank you for the presentation. I'm trying to think where we could make that available. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Website.
We can put it on the website. We'll get it loaded onto the Westport website. Just so again, I think it's more of an education component. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Margaret Sweet, Dartmouth, Mass. I have two things. One, I think that's a great presentation, and I want to know who checks those figures. Who is the auditor who checks how much they're getting for this and for that? Who checks those figures? Is it a government agency?
Theoretically, it's DPU.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. And two, there is currently now, the governor thinks that she should perhaps create a bill regarding solar fields in the state of Massachusetts. Has anybody read anything about this? Well, the governor is thinking that she should be able to come to any town and decide where solar fields are going to go and overrule any town that says, we want a solar field here, we don't want one. She thinks that she should be, and she's creating a commission to do this.
So just so you're aware, that was a piece of legislation that passed through the legislature, giving obviously the governor that authority to essentially, it was sold as to make the permitting process more efficient for both solar and for wind energy. It does take away local licensing and permitting from obviously the municipalities in order to streamline the process and move the process forward. So that is
Yes, I
true
just
in
got
that.
but
something
Margaret,
from-
is this a different initiative?
No,
No,
it's the same
it's the
thing.
same one.
Okay.
And I
They just had a meeting, excuse me,
Yes.
sorry. They just had a webinar on that
Right.
last week, I believe, and they're doing kind of a Commonwealth tour of that.
And I have it all from Serped, so Constance, I will
Correct.
send it to you, okay? Because I just got it today, and I haven't been able to read the whole thing yet. But it aggravates me that the governor thinks she's going to come to the town of Dartmouth and chop down all our trees because she wants to put a solar field there. And I don't think that's correct, and I think people have got to start standing up for this, because you cannot, I mean, it's not right.
Westport specifically, I know the planning board moved forward with some pretty strong solar. John sits on the planning board, and they did put in, because I agree with that. I think the impact of clear cutting 40 acres to
Right.
put in a solar field is ridiculous from an environmental standpoint, and it has been proven in some instances. So the planning board did say there can't be, I think, greater than 10 acres.
Actually, we may have recommended, but the town meeting.
Correct,
uh,
correct.
Created a solar bylaw from nothing.
Correct.
And then at the planning board, we've received, not so much recently, a number of applications for industrial-sized solar, mostly from farmers. And then people get to see what the impact is, and we said the amount, I think it was, Jake.
10 acres, I
Right,
think.
40 acres.
Yeah.
We said that's too much. And so we recommended the town meeting that bylaw be modified to limit it to 12. Now, some people may say that's still too much, but it started at 40. We looked at the impact and we recommended, but it was town meeting that tightened that law, not.
What town meeting, recently?
Westport Town Meeting.
West-
No,
Yeah.
when? What date?
Couple of years.
Oh,
2 years ago.
Couple of
Years ago.
years ago.
Yep.
Okay.
So there are protections in there. There's a lot of protections for neighbors, creating buffers, so you don't see those.
I know about that, but my concern is if the governor can overrule this, because in Dartmouth, we just passed an ADU, which we liked, okay? And her ADU overrules ours.
Yeah.
So the solar's going to do the same thing.
You would think, I mean, we do have that in place, and there, we can, challenge that. But I think that some of the projects you have seen in Westport have been in decent locations. I think the gravel pit on Old County Road, great opportunity to put a solar field in there. I think there's one currently, if you go northbound on 88, on the left-hand side, that's an abandoned old, actually, winery, I think. They're all, they had grape vine fields there. There is a solar field going there on the left-hand side. Again, not a horrible location, it's already cleared. But yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is that the governor should not tell us in our towns where she's going to put it.
Agree completely.
That's all I'm saying.
Takes away local control on a lot of issues, so. Any other questions or comments from the crowd? No. Thank you. I'm not sure if everyone heard, we're going to find a way to post that on the Town of Westport website, Christopher's presentation, so everyone can kind of take a look at it, and again, just be educated on what's happening and where all those are. We only have really 2 more quick agenda items. I don't think we can approve the minutes. I think it's,
Yeah, whoops.
that's okay.
Wait till that.
That's okay.
Yeah, we'll wait that one.
We'll bump that.
Sorry.
The only other thing is obviously setting another meeting date. I think, you can kind of see how this meeting has come together. I think it's helpful. I think we at least provided a front-end analysis on the wind projects out there, and then educating everyone on that. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish there. It may not necessarily be specific to offshore wind. I think the other issue that we've had is getting people to come and participate as professionals, no matter what side you're on with this. So we'll set another meeting date, and usually a couple weeks out, we'll try to put forward an agenda so everyone can see it. But I'm not sure what.
So 3 months would be January 22nd.
I cannot do that. I am traveling for work, I know for a fact. So it'd either be the week after.
January 15 or January 29 would be.
Isn't there a CRC meeting?
The next one is November 20th.
Oh, okay, so one's not been planned for January then.
We don't go that far ahead,
Maybe we could,
one step at a time.
so either the 15th or the 29th?
I would probably prefer the 29th, if we could do that.
January 29th, you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That would be my preference as well.
2026.
Are you done?
Is that,
Motion to adjourn.
no, hold on. Is that what you want for the date? January 29th?
Either one are fine with me.
Okay, everyone, okay, so I will remind everyone when we get closer,
What'd you say? We agree on the 29th?
January 29th of 2026.
2026.
That's it for business. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.